What's up everyone? In the last video I covered 5 things that I wish someone would have explained to me when I just started hiking on my own. And I said that in the next video, which is this one, I'll cover 5 more tips. Well, let's just say that I lied. Someone recently told me that all YouTubers lie, so I guess it's fine. So what did I lie about? Well, instead of covering 5 tips, I'll cover 7 tips, because I thought of 2 more that everyone new to backpacking should probably know. If you haven't watched the first part of this video, go watch it first. I'll link to it over here. My first tip, or tip number 6 if you've watched the first part, is to try bringing lighter food on your hikes. When I just started out, I used to bring food that I thought was perfect for hiking, but actually wasn't because it was too heavy and it took up too much space inside my own backpack. I used to bring 1 or 2 cans of beans, some meat, a few beers, lots of junk food like chips, Snicker bars and other snacks, and some quick meals for instance like mashed potatoes or something like that, where you just need to pour the water on top and they're ready. Some of this food is actually good for hiking, but some of it definitely isn't. Nowadays I try to bring food that's high in calories, as light as possible, easy to cook, that doesn't leave behind too much trash that I'll have to carry back home, and that takes up as little amount of space inside my backpack as possible. I'll bring nuts, dried fruit, oats, rice, couscous, pasta, dehydrated meals, some Snicker bars or some oat bars whenever I need quick calories during the day, and some instant ramen noodles. So what I'm saying is, when you're in the grocery store the next time getting prepared for your next hike, just spend some time reading the labels of the items and compare which one provides more calories with less weight. Doing this will save some space in your backpack, and it will be easier for you to walk because your backpack will weigh less. My tip number 2 is to start filtering water. Like 90% of the people who aren't into hiking don't even know that water filtering is a thing. Essentially, if you're hiking for 2 or 3 days, you don't need to carry 2, 4 or maybe even 6 liters of water. You just need to carry maybe 1 or 2 liters and filter new water whenever you run out. I personally didn't know that when I started out, so I just carried a lot of water, and I usually ended up running out of water on my last day. And my backpack was incredibly heavy because of that. But it doesn't need to be like that. You just need to buy something like this, which costs about $20 to $40. How it works is you fill up this pouch with dirty water, screw on the water filter, and out comes clean water basically. It filters out any bacteria and dirt, which is good for about 90% of the water sources out there. However, it doesn't filter out any viruses or chemicals, which means that it isn't usable near farm areas and industrial areas. For that, you need a more advanced water filter anyway, such as the Sawyer Select water filter. But honestly, you don't really need them because this regular filter is good for most rivers, lakes, puddles, ponds, and streams. I personally use the Sawyer Micro Squeeze, but another good option is the Be-Free Katadyn. I'll link to this water filter in the video description, so if you're interested in that, you can check it out. I've actually seen a lot of people buying water filter just as a worst case scenario in case they need it in a survival situation or whatever. But honestly, if you're out there for more than 1 day, you should definitely use a water filter and stop carrying like stupid amounts of water with you. My tip number 3 will probably offend some people who are into survival and bushcraft. It's that you don't need to make a fire every night, and you don't need to bring a huge survival knife. When I started out, I couldn't imagine not building a fire at the end of the day. You know, for me, it was a big part of being outdoors. And I do agree that there's just, something calming and relaxing about chilling near an open fireplace after a long day of hiking. But honestly, it gets tiring to do that when you start hiking more often. Nowadays, I'll just quickly build up my tent, cook some food on my cooking stove, and get inside my tent and watch Netflix or read a book. Having a fire is just not something that I want to do anymore, and it definitely isn't a necessity. Also, it's a big fire hazard if you're not careful. Another thing that I did is I bought this big ass knife with me because I thought, if a bear comes or something, I'll just, poke it with this thing and he'll go away. I guess everybody does that, right? At least when they're starting out. Honestly, if you want to feel safe, a much better thing to do is just carry a small pepper spray in your pocket. I actually did that when I used to hike in Latvia, but I think pepper sprays are illegal here in Spain, or you need a permit for that, so I just don't do that anymore. Anyways, nowadays I carry this tiny pocket knife, which not only has a knife in case I need to cut something, but it also has scissors, corkscrew, beer cap opener, and even tweezers if I need to pull out a tick. And it also weighs much less and takes up less space. Also, if a bear comes, I can just take out this thing out of my pocket, you know, ask the bear to wait a few seconds while I unfold the knife and, you know, just poke it a few times and it will probably just go away. My tip number 4 is that you should know how to prepare for the weather. Honestly, this could be a video by itself, so I'll just quickly cover the most important things that I've learned. If you're camping in winter, in terms of gear, you need to have a good sleeping bag, which is rated for the appropriate temperature. You need to have a good sleeping pad with an R value of at least 4, and you need good insulated winter boots. In my opinion, these are the 3 most important items to get. All the others are fairly easy to get, like you probably have some jackets, pants, thermal clothing, and some thick socks laying around the house, and you can just layer a lot of them on you until you feel warm. In winter, it's definitely better to bring more clothing and not regret that later. If you're hiking in rain, you basically need 2 things. One is a waterproof rain jacket or a cheap plastic raincoat, and the second one is some kind of a system to keep your gear dry, such as a waterproof pack liner or dry sacks. If you're hiking in the mountains, avoid thunderstorms because that can get very dangerous. Always plan for a route out and know where's the nearest shelter to run in case the weather suddenly changes. With a shelter, I mean rocks, woods, or something like that, because the weather up there can change in a matter of minutes. Also remember to bring a sunscreen and a hat if you're hiking maybe above 1000 meters altitude, because you can get sunburns very easily up there. And the last important thing about weather that I've learned is that if there has been a dry season, you need to make sure that the rivers haven't actually dried out and that you'll have enough water to filter along the trail. Tip number 5 is to bring gear that you will need, not might need. It's very tempting, especially if you're a beginner, to bring every survival item that you know of in case this or that happens. Some of the items that I bought with me when I started out were pieces of wood and paper for starting a fire, a fishing rod, an axe, a saw, books that I ended up not reading, extra layers of clothing that I didn't need, and I remember one time I even bought a pair of extra shoes just because I thought that I might need them in case my main ones get wet. Bringing all of that is useless, unless it's an item that could actually save your life. Like, I'm all for bringing a first aid kit or some clothing if you aren't sure that you'll be warm enough, or a pair of extra socks, and you know, stuff like that. But now I'm way more strict about what items I'm bringing, and I leave at home all the items that I potentially would need in some random situation that's very unlikely to happen. Less gear means less weight, and that means that I'll enjoy my hike much more, so definitely keep that in mind. My tip number 6 is to learn the most important stuff about staying safe while you're hiking. The first part of this means bringing appropriate gear. So if you're hiking alone, you should get a cheap first aid kit, and not only that, you should also learn how to use it. Mine is just a regular first aid kit, which I bought off Amazon, and I added some lip balm in there and some ibuprofen. Also, if you're getting one for hiking, definitely make sure that it includes a thermal blanket, because that can actually save your life. The second part of this tip is related to insurance. If you're going out to the mountains, you need to make sure that your insurance covers hiking in your desired altitude, and that it also covers any evacuation costs. I mean, evacuation with a helicopter usually costs tens of thousands of dollars, so it's definitely worth it to get insurance that covers that. If you're doing that often, maybe even consider joining an alpine club. In the US, there's a lot more options to choose from, but in Europe, you're basically only limited to the Austrian Alpine Club from what I've read. It's usually about $15 to $100 per year, and in addition to insurance, you also get some other benefits such as reduced prices at mountain huts and discounts at certain gear stores. And my last tip is not to get obsessed with ultralight gear. If you're just starting out, it's probably not relevant right now, but I can basically guarantee that after a few months you'll be trying to shed every gram that you're bringing. Ultralight hiking is like a disease and it's spreading like crazy, and I'll be honest with you, I'm probably infected with it as well. In a few words, ultralight hiking is paying absurd amounts of money for gear that's only barely lighter. For instance, for a normal person, an ultralight tent might look a bit shitty from the outside, and their first guess would be that it costs about $50, but actually it's probably closer to $500. Anyway, the issue with ultralight gear is that it's usually overpriced, it's less durable, and usually not as practical and as comfortable. Me personally, I try to find something in between because I feel like that's where you get the best bang for your buck. So my advice would be to stop focusing on getting the lightest possible gear, but instead get gear that's light, durable, and at affordable prices. If you want to, you can just check out my video where I share some of my gear setup. I'll link to that over here. Alright, so this was the last tip from me. If you have more tips like this, please share them in the comments because I'm sure that will help everyone out. I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time, but only if you subscribed. Bye!